The prolific and eminent Italian philosopher and poet Giacomo Leopardi of the 19th century gathered a series of poems together and turned it into this day book, and he called it Miscellany of Thoughts, or Collection of Thoughts, depending on the translation you use. And in this book, there's an entry that says, I quote, "Believing the universe infinite is an optical illusion. At least that's how it seems to me. I don't mean that metaphysics can already prove this, or that there's factual proof that it isn't infinite. But putting aside metaphysical arguments, I think that an earthly analogy virtually proves that the infinity of the universe is nothing but a natural illusion of the imagination. When I look at the sky," someone was saying to me, "and think that beyond all these visible celestial bodies, there are yet more and more, my thought pushes past all limits and leads me to presume there are yet more heavenly bodies beyond the beyond, and beyond even that. The same thing, I say, happens to a child or an unreflective adult on a mountaintop or high seas or soaring tower. He sees a horizon but knows that beyond it lies even more land or water, and more beyond those, and yet more beyond the beyond. And he concludes, or would happily conclude, that the land or sea is infinite. But just as experience has proved that our world, infinite as it may seem, and for a long time was believed to be, does indeed have limits, so too we must believe, by analogy, that the whole mass of the universe, the assemblage of all worlds that seem infinite for the same reason, we cannot see its limits and are tremendously far from being able to see them. That this vastness isn't absolute after all, but relative, is in fact bounded. The child, the savage, the primitive peoples would swear, have sworn, would have tricked themselves into believing that the earth and sea are boundless, and so they believed, and believe still, that the stars we see can't be numbered, that their numbers are infinite." The analogy between the finite earth and the universe as a whole collapses under closer scrutiny. The earth and sea seem infinite from limited vantage points, but their finiteness was demonstrable because they are objects inside the universe, subject to spatial boundaries we could eventually measure. The universe itself, however, is not inside anything in the same way. It is the totality of space and time. When we discovered Earth was finite, we did so by moving across it, mapping it entirely. There is no equivalent outside vantage point from which to survey the whole of the universe. The limits of Earth exist because its surface curves back on itself, but that does not imply that space itself must do so. Indeed, certain cosmological models allow for infinite expanse without contradiction, and observational data, such as the uniformity of the cosmic microwave background, it's consistent with infinite flatness. Furthermore, the psychological illusion described, thinking there's always something beyond, might not be an illusion at all if space is genuinely unbounded. In fact, in mathematics and physics, infinity is not merely a failure of imagination. It can be a natural property of systems, as with the set of integers. The inability to see an end does not prove or disprove infinity, but neither does the finiteness of a subset of the universe, like Earth, imply the finiteness of the whole world. The analogy simply assumes that because one thing we once thought infinite turns out finite, all other apparent infinities must be the same, an inductive leap that does not hold under rigorous reasoning.